Thank you so much for joining the campaign for safer setbacks from fracking in Colorado. My name is Thomas. I'm an organizer with Food and Water Watch. We are working with Colorado Rising and many other groups to pass Proposition 112 in Colorado. In order to win this campaign, we'll need to have thousands of conversations with individual voters through door-to-door canvassing. So this training video will go over everything you need to knock doors and get out the vote for Proposition 112. First, let's go over why we're knocking doors. Thanks to some recent studies, we know that personal face-to-face conversations are the best way to educate and turn out voters more than any other form of communication. One-on-one, in-person conversations can double the likelihood that someone will end up voting yes on Proposition 112. And having genuine conversations with people is our best shot at countering the tens of millions of dollars the oil and gas industry is planning to spend on negative ads during this campaign. So door-to-door canvassing is pretty straightforward. We're knocking on doors and talking to people, but here are just 5 simple tips to keep in mind. First, you want to knock or ring the bell. If no one's home, just leave a flyer at the door and move on. If someone's home, you want to talk to them. So introduce yourself, explain why you're knocking on their door. This information will be in the script, but you don't have to worry about reading it word for word. Just have a genuine conversation. You want to make a strong ask. So in this case, we are saying, will you vote yes on Proposition 112 for safer setbacks from fracking? This is really important because we want to find out how people plan to vote so that we can plan the campaign accordingly. We want to thank people regardless of their response. We've taken up a little bit of their time, so just be courteous and say thanks before you leave. And last but not least, make sure you record all of the information that's required on either your clipboard or a minivan, which we will talk about next. So let's get down to the actual process of canvassing and collecting that voter information. So all you need is a couple hours and a comfortable pair of shoes. There are a couple tools we use to collect the voter information and make it really easy for you to knock on doors for this campaign. So if you have a smartphone, either an Apple or an Android or a tablet, we really recommend using the Minivan app. So this app is free in whatever app store you use, and it makes the process both for you as a canvasser and for organizers just a lot easier to track the data and collect the data that we are getting while we're knocking doors. So it basically allows you to track your conversations with voters and then send that information directly back to the database without any paperwork. If you don't have a smartphone, that's totally okay. We can track the same information sort of analog style with a clipboard and a printed list of names. We still want you to come out regardless of whether or not you have a smartphone. We'll get you set up. But first, I am going to run through the process of using Minivan, this app, and get everyone set up. So first step is just to download the app. Like I said, it's Minivan. It's in either of the app stores. Once you've done that, you make a quick account just with your email and password. On the first screen, you'll see a button to enter a list number, just like what's circled here. You'll get a list number from an organizer before you start canvassing, and this is just the list of people that you will contact. And it's typically 50 to 75 doors, all within a couple blocks or within a neighborhood that you can walk. So just enter the list number, then push submit, and this will download the list of voters and their information. You will need Wi-Fi or a data signal to download this list, so probably best to do it before you head out, but you don't need a signal while you're out canvassing since the information's already been downloaded. So first off, you'll see just a list of addresses. It's organized by street, like the picture on the left. The dots under each address represent the number of voters in that household. So if there's more than one, that means there's just 2 registered voters that we want to talk to at that address. There's a menu, so you can click the 3 lines up in the top left corner. That menu gives you a few options to just sort the list differently, either by individual people or by household. You can pull up a map. This does use cellular data, so be aware of that. And it'll also just show you the progress, so the percentage of doors you've knocked or people you've talked to out of your total list. So when you get to a particular address, you can just press on that address, and that'll bring up the names of voters in that home. So again, if there's multiple names, you can see those people listed there. Just knock on the door and see if any of the people that you're looking for are home. You can press an individual person's name to bring up their detailed information. This will also bring up the sample script and the survey questions, kind of like the one on the right. So after you've talked to the voter, again, we want to have a genuine conversation, so don't worry about rushing it. But after you talk to them and you've asked them how they're going to vote on Proposition 112, you want to record their answers on a scale of 5 to 1. So for our campaign, a 5 is someone who is definitely voting yes on Proposition 112, and a 1 is someone who is definitely voting no. And it'll be up to you to put people on this scale, but you'll get the hang of it, get a sense of which way people are leaning. And it's just important to record this information accurately. Of course, not everyone's that you're looking for will be home. So on the screen on the right, you'll see that there's a little yes, no button for if you're able to contact this person. Just make sure that's on the left to know if you weren't able to talk to them, and then choose the reason why they weren't there. In most cases, it'll be because they weren't home. But if it's a building you couldn't get to the specific address, that would be inaccessible. If you find out they are deceased or have moved, you have that option too. Regardless though, it's worth leaving a flyer at the door if you can, so that whoever's there knows to vote yes on Proposition 112. So here's an example. Jason is my colleague, another Food and Water Watch organizer. So this is what his information would look like in Minivan. We know Jason is definitely going to vote yes on Proposition 112, and he is ready to work on the campaign, so we've marked him as a volunteer. The other people in his house weren't home, so they are marked with an orange dot, and you can see the NH next to those people's names too. So when you've finished your list, you can go back to this menu and be sure to click the sync button. So this sends the information you collected back to the database, and it's really, really important that you do this before finishing your shift or moving on to another list. Again, we gotta collect this voter information so we know how people are planning to vote, and we can plan the campaign accordingly. So again, you will need Wi-Fi or cell signal for this. It only takes a minute, so hopefully that's not an issue, but it's just the start and finish of each list that you need a connection for. So that's Minivan. It's super straightforward. If you are attending an in-person Canvas event, an organizer or another volunteer can walk you through it. But even for first-time users, it's pretty easy once you run through it. Now I'm going to talk about what it looks like if you're using just a printed list. So it's a lot of the same information. You'll get a list of addresses and voters plus a map. And then this sheet is the sample script and a key for entering the results while you're canvassing. So you can see it's the same script, it's the same scale of 5 to 1 and questions about how they'll vote and if they'll volunteer. And then the Canvas results key there at the top for the different reasons why you might not be able to talk to someone. So you'll get this at the top of your Canvas packet, and then you'll also get a map, kind of like the photo on top. The red dots obviously are the places you are, or the doors you're knocking on. And then the list on the bottom is kind of what the voter list will look like. So again, this is Jason's information. You see his address, you see his sex and age, and then you would just circle 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 based on how he says he'll vote, whether or not he'll volunteer, and then just check the boxes for not home, moved, refused, inaccessible, or deceased. So again, just like in Minivan, the information we collect is what's really important. So for every door you knock on, for every voter you talk to, you should record some information, and just make sure that when you're done with your list, you get it back to whoever gave it to you in the first place. So usually an organizer or a volunteer captain, just make sure that they get that list back. So that's it. Now you're ready to go canvassing and start talking to voters about Proposition 112. You can find all the canvassing events at Colorado or at corising.org/events. This list will be updated. The calendar will be updated regularly. So check back there for events in your area. If you're in Denver, come to the Food and Water Watch office every Thursday and Saturday. We're having regular canvasses there where you can just show up and we will have everything you need to get started. You, of course, are welcome to canvass on your own as well. So reach out to, again, my colleague Jason, our Colorado organizer, or to Colorado Rising at these email addresses if you want to canvass on your own. We can set you up with lists of voters and everything else you need. So thank you again for sitting through this training, getting ready to canvass. This is the most important tool in our arsenal to win this campaign. Having individual conversations with voters is really, really critical. So thank you again. Reach out if you have any questions, and let's get to it. There's a lot of work to do. Let's get started. Thanks.